Guys, this morning we're talking about rental yields, and did you know that if you can get that rent up 10,000 a year, your property will sell for 10k more when it's commercial? How does this work? Stay tuned.
It's Batman. Hey,
Robin, how are you, bud?
mate, I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. How are you today?
Are you the Robin Hood of real estate?
Might as well be. I'm definitely the Robin to your Batman, and with the hype that movie brought out, came out.
Good movie.
Top movie. 3 hours, but or maybe even just over. So make sure you bring a pillow and a blanket.
Yeah, I'm hearing amazing things about it. I'm hearing amazing things.
Before we jump into our topic this morning, and we'll have a good chat before this about health. But check this out: coffee in a can. Are you is this
what do you reckon?
Does this challenge you? Because you're
your former life, you're a PT trainer, so you understand health. That doesn't look like health to me.
Nah, this looks like the easy way out now. Like, apparently it's #1 canned coffee in Japan, just FYI, and it's only 5. Yep. Hey, hang on, only 5 calories a can.
Just coffee. Just coffee. Yeah. No sugar.
Well, we're here. We're live. Novak HQ. We're talking here. 10k plus rent can make you more on your property. We're talking yield. We're talking commercial properties here. Let's dive deep. Let's talk about it.
You know what, landlords, we see it particularly with unattended negotiations between unattended. It's like when the naughty kids are playing without the parents, and when a landlord often negotiates a lease with their tenant and they don't get the terms right. And this is going down commercial, industrial, retail, everything. These leases are super important because the value is indexed off this lease. The value, the selling price of the property is indexed off this lease. There's a couple of things today we're going to teach you to watch out for to make sure you protect your position. If anything, you make your position even better as a landlord in these negotiations. The trigger points, the touch points that are going to add enormous value, not just rent, but add enormous value to your property. Absolutely.
And I think it can be quite daunting and a bit of a delicate situation when you're the landlord, you're dealing with it privately with your tenants. You know, things can go a bunch of different ways. And I think one of the wiser approaches is to definitely seek out the advice of an agent or agents that can guide you through that. Because like you just said, it can go multiple ways, and there's really, really crucial touch points in there. I think let's look at what touch point #1 might look like, Mark. What do you reckon?
Yep. Let's go.
I think touch point #1, and I think it has to be one of the most crucial, is the price that we're looking at from the get-go for the rent. You know, and that's what we're looking at now, is because the value of that lease, when it translates to the value of the property, is crucial, especially if you're going to go down that route as an owner to potentially look to bring that on the market. This is what's going to entice people. This is what they're going to see. All right, what's the lease look like value-wise? Bang. And then what it folds over to is, if that's what they're paying on a net value for rent, are they paying?
Yeah, so just in kindergarten maths.
Let's go for it.
Yeah, in kindergarten maths for commercial property. So to give you an idea, when someone buys a property, they'll buy it on a 5% yield or a 4% yield, or they'll buy it on a 6% yield, depending on the type of property it is. Yield is the amount of rent coming in over the year, and you whack that over the value of the property, and that gives you a percentage. So say it's rented for 20k, so I'll do an easy figure. Say it's rented for 100k a year, and say the property is $1 million property. Well, 100k over $1 million is a 10% return. Yeah. So that's your yield. Furthermore, you'll get a net yield or a gross yield. So what I just gave you was just pretty gross. It's just like, just tell us the rent, throw it over the price. But when you start knitting it out, you start taking out strata costs, water costs, council costs, even real estate agent costs, even stamp duty sometimes on a net. They'll start doing stuff. So back to, that's how we're doing the calculations. That then means if people are paying for the value on a property, on a commercial property valued on a 5% return, every single dollar you can bring in more in rent is going to add to the purchase price. Not with residential.
Yeah, that's very tricky, very different. So we look at it in a commercial aspect here. So when we say net rent, that is purely the rent that is being paid for the property. Then we look at, if we're looking at a gross lease, it's factoring in potentially parts or all of the outgoings that are included for the property, which could be strata, which could be council, which could be water. And it's quite interesting when you're speaking to investors out there and they're asking you questions about a property you might have, and it's like, great, that's the gross price for it. What's the net rent? What's the net rent for the property? What are the outgoings that the tenant is paying? And if you've been someone that's fortunate enough to put together a really awesome lease that the tenant pays for X, Y, Z, the whole shebang, such a game changer, because it's much more enticing.
Huge. And big, like if someone's looking at getting into commercial properties, this is really, really important to consider as well when you're doing that. And you've got to protect. So what that then means, now that we've established that, is you've got to protect that number. So what you often do is you get landlords that will do a rent-free period. They'll give tenants just rent for a month for nothing, or for 6 months, or for 3 months. And the reason why they do that is they're trying to catapult, or they're trying to push up that annual rent. Because every time they push that annual rent up by $1, it's adding $5 to the value of the property. $5, $20 to the value of the property. $1 to $20. I think that's right. So it's really, really important. So often you'll see landlords, when they're negotiating a fresh lease or a new lease, they'll throw in everything, including the kitchen sink, but they'll preserve the rent, or they'll get that rental number up because it's indexing the value of the property.
Absolutely. And speaking of maintaining that value as well, and obviously seeing it grow over the course of a lease, this is when you start exploring other factors like your method of annual rent review. And this can come into many different factors or styles, such as, we deal primarily with fixed rates over the course of a lease. And that can span anywhere from, as low as 2%, 3%, 4%, that the higher that percentage goes, it means every year the rent will increase by that figure. And that's another great way to see the projection of your value increase over the course of time. Then there are other ways to look at it as far as CPI goes, which is Consumer Price Index, and that's indexed on market value at the time. What do you think about that?
That's adding value. That's adding value again. So the message in today is, commercial properties, you really got to work on that rent. And if you've got no market increases built into your lease, you're giving yourself a hard time with growing the value of the property. Because don't forget, every time a dollar rent goes up, it's going to be the price is directly going to be indexed off that in commercial. So, as a landlord, the last thing I would drop out of my lease when I'm negotiating a new tenant is a 2%, 3%, 4%, 5% increase. I would do everything to fight for that, preserve that, and offer other incentives. But that just got to look after it. Like, just, and I take on leases, sometimes some big companies and some big leases, and you open up the lease, and I'm working on a sort of $20 million asset at the moment, where the lease was done between the landlord and, believe it or not, the landlord and the tenant, and it was a rubbish lease. So much so, the landlord, I reckon, killed about $4 million in the value of his. property because it wasn't negotiated correctly, the lease. Now, the problem is when that asset goes to get sold, if the lease is a 20 by 20 year lease, you're stuck with that forever.
Yeah.
So make sure you got good sound advice when you're negotiating a commercial lease. Get a pro to do it, and make sure you get a great lawyer, because often a lawyer will look at the shit lease and go, "That's rubbish. What did you do that for?" Or the agent will.
And the good thing is when you start off with a good lawyer, and you're starting off base at the heads of agreement, which by both parties are looking at face value of the proposal, all the facts. And we were talking about this the other day. When you look at a heads of agreement done properly, wow, it's like a work of art, and you can see everything, variables from start to finish, and it's a beauty, and it's completely transparent. And then I think that's one of the most crucial factors with a lease coming off strong. Now, speaking of big deals, big companies, they normally, as you said, go for really long leases, in that 10 to 20 year realm. Is that what you reckon? That's another really important factor about seeing the value of your asset increase, having a really strong lease with long lease.
Well, you don't get a second bite of the cherry. You can't fix it up. So often these big leases, these long leases, if you haven't got that right up front with commercial terms, commercial rent, and getting the outgoings right and stuff like that, you're stuck for a very, very long time. So it's, believe it or not, it happens with landlords, and I don't know how they can end up, getting their arm twisted on a lease like that. Or even a tenant. I think a tenant, you got to make sure you got good sound advice as well of what you're going into.
Absolutely, because there's a two-way street. It's two parties involved here. It's not about one, being better than the other. It's about all parties being in agreement with the terms that are put forward. And so that way, we're protecting both people. We're protecting the asset, and we're protecting the future of the asset with the person that's in place. I think it's pretty interesting that we've been diving this topic because, like I said, dabbling on the heads of agreements. Heads of agreements are such a delicate thing from the get-go, and experiencing it for the first time, myself, like what we're talking about, like 14, 15 months ago, I was really like, what do we do here? It's how do I go through this with someone? But it's such a step-by-step process, and I feel the more you deal with them, the more confidence that you have, and I think as well, it's the more seasoned you become by dealing with very complex businesses, complex business models and ideas. It really helps you to become stronger in that area. And then as well, having advice from a lawyer to even look over that before anything else is pretty key.
And also, the lawyer's got to be acutely experienced in commercial leases in the local area. So, because there's these commercial terms are, what made that rent sounds a bit high, that rent sounds a bit low. These commercial terms are, no, that's not the way. It's done in the area. So I think also make sure if you are a tenant going into a lease or a landlord going into a lease, the lawyer that you're using does a lot of commercial leases in that particular area. I think also helps as well. But yeah, I think the most thing in conclusion today, the biggest lesson is: did you know that every 10 grand in rent you get more for your commercial property is adding 200 grand in value? And there's a lot of residential punters out there that don't know that. So there you go.
It's good to keep an eye out. And you know what? It's always good when people can reach out to us if they ever need advice, ever need assistance. Guys, when you watch this, we're here to help. We're here to break things down and make things simple for you, because at the end of the day, we speak to so many buyers and we speak to so many sellers, and at the end of the day, they want options. We're here to give options.
Absolutely. Mate, enjoy the 18.5 degrees this morning, guys. I think winter's definitely going to be starting in the next 3 months. You can feel it already. And good luck with the rains, guys. Hopefully there's a bit of threat of rains around the northern beaches, but hopefully it won't be too much.
Bless. All right, Batman, you take care.
Good luck to Lisa and Michael Sillage today on Bix Road auction.
Ooh, Bix Road auction, 25 Bix Road, 10:30 a.m. It's all happening.
Jump on our social media, watch the auction live. That is going to be one hell of an auction at 10:30.
Definitely. Novak represent.
See ya.